Ilia Topuria was supposed to dominate the next decade, undefeated, champion, untouchable. And then he vanished. A divorce, a family crisis, and rumors of a total emotional collapse. But here's the twist. We've seen this story before. Mike Tyson lived it, and it nearly destroyed his career. Tonight, we dive into the storm Topuria is facing, and why Tyson's past might be Topuria's future. Ilia Topuria didn't fall in the cage. He fell at home. One moment, he was the division's king, a fresh-faced champion with swagger, momentum, global attention. The next, he was issuing a statement that he would be stepping away indefinitely. No injuries, no illness, just personal issues. That phrase is rare for champions. It's code. It's a signal that something serious is breaking behind the curtain. And that something came to light quickly. A divorce, a split involving children, a situation with emotional stakes bigger than any title fight. For a fighter, family drama is not background noise. It's a psychological earthquake. Training requires obsession. Domestic chaos kills obsession. And the more fans dug, the darker the picture got. Reports of custody concerns, restructured living arrangements, stress so heavy that Topuria openly admitted he couldn't give the UFC a timeline. This wasn't a break, this was a collapse. And as the MMA world tried to make sense of Ilia's disappearance, an uncomfortable parallel began to emerge. A cautionary tale from the most famous combat sports tragedy of all time, Mike Tyson. Because Tyson didn't lose his prime to an opponent, he lost it to his divorces. And if Ilia Topuria isn't careful, the same shadow could swallow him too. In fighting, nothing destroys a man faster than a broken home. That's not speculation, it's history. And Mike Tyson was the proof. Tyson's first marriage to Robin Givens was a 16-month firestorm, public humiliation, accusations, legal fights, emotional explosions. He described that period as the worst beating of my life, and it showed. His discipline shattered, his focus evaporated, his training camps became battlegrounds instead of sanctuaries. His second divorce was even worse. The split with Monica Turner didn't just break him emotionally, it drained him financially. Millions lost, custody battles, courtroom stress that sapped the aggression he once carried into the ring. Tyson said years later that he felt mentally ruined by the process, describing the aftermath as a fog that followed him everywhere. Now look at Ilia Topuria, young champion, undefeated, skyrocketing fame, a future worth millions. And then a marriage collapsing, children caught in the middle, a champion torn between the cage and the courtroom. Topuria is facing the exact psychological ambush that chewed Tyson alive. Because divorces aren't just about signatures and lawyers. They're about identity, about dignity, about a man realizing his personal foundation isn't just cracked, it's crumbling. And just like Tyson, Topuria is stepping into the most dangerous fight of his life, one he cannot win with punches. Which brings us to the next twist. Not everyone believes this hiatus is just emotional. Just when fans settled on the heartbreak narrative, the entire situation exploded again. Because Arman Tsarukyan stepped in with a theory that turned everything sideways. According to him, Ilia's hiatus isn't just about divorce or children. He believes the champion is being shielded, intentionally or strategically, by forces bigger than personal sorrow. Tsarukyan suggested that Topuria's break is conveniently aligned with UFC matchmaking goals, business timing, and the desire to stir division drama. In other words, while the world is focused on Ilia's private pain, the UFC might be playing chess. To Tsarukyan, the timeline looks too perfect. A champion steps back, the division opens, the contenders surge, hype rises, interim belts become possible, unification fights become explosive. If this is orchestrated, even partially, Topuria's personal crisis becomes a promotional engine. But here's the gripping twist. Tyson lived this dynamic too. During Tyson's divorces, promoters used his pain as narrative fuel. The broken champion, the distracted legend, the man fighting demons. His suffering became part of the show, and it destroyed him from the inside. Topuria may be walking into the same trap, his personal collapse turning into entertainment, his heartbreak becoming marketing, his privacy morphing into spectacle. But whether Tsarukyan is right or wrong, one thing is undeniable. The combination of divorce pressure, public analysis, and UFC politics is a cocktail that has brought greater men to their knees. And Mike Tyson was the proof. When people talk about divorce ruining fighters, they usually talk about emotion, heartbreak, distraction, mental collapse. But the part that destroys careers even faster is the financial bloodletting, the kind Mike Tyson knows better than almost any athlete in history. Tyson wasn't just emotionally wrecked during his divorces. He was financially gutted. During his split from Monica Turner, Tyson was ordered to pay $6.5 million from future earnings, surrender the family home, and agree to ongoing custody and support responsibilities. And that was after losing millions in his first divorce with Robin Givens, a marriage so chaotic that even the Dominican Republic paperwork had to be reprocessed in the U.S. This wasn't just a breakup, it was an economic amputation. Now, look at Ilia Topuria. He's not at Tyson's level of fortune, not yet, but he is at the stage where every million counts. And divorce at this point of his career doesn't just hurt emotionally, it cuts directly into his prime earning window. He has a UFC belt, he has sponsorships, he has mainstream appeal. But divorces don't care about belts. They don't care about hype. They care about assets, property splits, financial obligations, child support, long-term commitments. And Topuria's case mirrors Tyson's in one specific way. A large share of future earnings may be on the table. This is where things get dark. Every paycheck Topuria earns now might be divided. Every future fight purse might be negotiated not in the gym, but in a courtroom. Every potential big money match could feel less like a win and more like a bill payment. That kind of financial pressure suffocates motivation. Tyson said once that nothing drains a fighter's confidence like realizing the millions he earns don't feel like his anymore. You fight for money, he said, and then you realize the money isn't even yours. If Topuria is staring at that exact reality, it explains everything. Why he stepped away, why he's silent, why he looks emotionally fractured. This isn't just about a breakup. It's about the terrifying realization that the empire he built might not stay in his hands. And that leads to something even more dangerous. Once money starts slipping, a fighter's hunger twists into desperation. There's a reason coaches say the most dangerous thing in a fighter's life isn't another opponent, it's domestic chaos. Because the cage requires clarity, aggression controlled by discipline, violence fueled by purpose. Without emotional stability, the fighter becomes split between two wars, one in the octagon and one in the heart. Mike Tyson openly admitted that his divorces hollowed him out. He described waking up with dread, training with bitterness, and entering fights with the emotional oxygen sucked out of him. He lost his edge, not because he got older, but because he was hurting in ways that punches couldn't solve. And the similarities with Ilia Topuria are staggering. Reports describe Ilia as distant, silent, emotionally unavailable, a man trying to hold together two identities, the fighter and the father, while the structure beneath him is collapsing. And that kind of psychological weight doesn't stay outside the gym. It leaks into sparring, into recovery, into motivation, into the fire that makes champions act like champions. Remember this, Topuria's fighting style was built on swagger, on confidence, on psychological dominance. A divorce attacks all three. Instead of thinking about his next title defense, he's thinking about lawyers. Instead of visualizing victory, he's visualizing courtrooms. Instead of dreaming about legacy, he's worrying about custody schedules. And then comes the worst part, the public scrutiny. Tyson said the humiliation of having his private life exposed was more painful than any punch he had ever taken. Now, Ilia is living that humiliation in real time. Headlines dissecting his split, fans taking sides, comment sections turning his pain into entertainment. This is the exact psychological spiral that broke Tyson. Depression, loss of motivation, self-doubt, and the creeping fear that you are no longer the man you were before. If Topuria doesn't anchor himself now, the same spiral can swallow him. Because the truth is brutal. A fighter can survive a broken arm. A fighter cannot survive a broken identity. And as the cracks widen, something else is happening in the background. The division is circling like sharks. While Ilia Topuria struggles to stabilize his personal life, the UFC does what the UFC always does. It adapts, it pivots, it capitalizes. A champion's vulnerability isn't the organization's crisis, it's their marketing opportunity. And this is where the story echoes Tyson's second downfall with frightening precision. When Tyson was collapsing under divorce pressure, promoters didn't give him space. They accelerated. They booked fights he wasn't mentally present for. They used his emotional chaos to sell tickets. They embraced the narrative of Tyson fighting through crisis because it was profitable, even if it broke him. Now look at Topuria. The UFC doesn't slow down for personal tragedy. They don't delay divisions. They don't freeze competition. Instead, contenders begin to roar. Arman Tsarukyan talks. Justin Gaethje sniffs opportunity. Paddy Pimblett positions himself. Every lightweight sees the same thing. A distracted champion is a beatable champion. And the UFC quietly loves this energy. A messy division is an exciting division. A vulnerable champion creates urgency. An unstable title picture generates hype. This pressure isn't accidental, it's structural. The UFC is a momentum machine. When a champion steps back, the machine doesn't stop. It simply builds around him. And the longer Ilia stays away, the more he risks returning to a division that has built its identity without him. That's exactly what happened to Tyson. He came back into divisions that had moved on, opponents who had prepared for years, while he fell into emotional darkness. Topuria may face the same fate, because while he's dealing with lawyers and heartbreak, his rivals are dealing with training camps and strategy. While his mind is fractured, theirs are sharpening. And while he's trying to hold his life together, they're trying to tear his championship reign apart. This is the most dangerous moment of his career. Not because someone can beat him in the octagon, but because he's no longer fighting in the octagon. He's fighting everywhere else. And that is exactly how Tyson fell. If Ilia Topuria thought stepping away from the spotlight would protect him, he underestimated the MMA world's hunger for answers. Silence, for a champion, doesn't calm the storm. It feeds it. Fans don't wait. They don't breathe. They don't say, "Give him space." They fill in the blanks with their own narratives. And those narratives spread faster than any statement the UFC or Topuria could release. This is exactly what happened to Mike Tyson during his divorce eras. When Tyson shut down, the world didn't sympathize. It speculated. It created myths. It turned private tragedy into public judgment. Same pattern, different decade. And Ilia? He's watching that exact cycle unfold. Except now, it's multiplied by social media. At first, fans defended him. It's personal. Let the man heal. But the longer he stayed quiet, the more the tone shifted. Doubt replaced empathy. Skepticism replaced patience. And eventually, the comments turned venomous. He's scared of contenders. He's mentally broken. This is Tyson all over again. He's not coming back the same. Here's the brutal truth. Fighter silence is interpreted as weakness. And weakness becomes the story. When Tyson disappeared after his emotional collapses, fans turned on him in real time. Every rumor became a headline. Every headline became a punchline. And the stress didn't just pile up, it multiplied. Now, Ilia's facing that same multiplication. And the UFC? They don't protect fighters from this. They weaponize it. Hype thrives on uncertainty. Mystery sells. A fractured champion creates anticipation, and anticipation is money. Topuria's silence, intentional or not, is generating more conversation than if he had defended the title twice already. But the psychological cost of this public spiral is devastating. A champion thrives on identity, on belief. When fans question you, it chips away at that belief. When analysts question you, it cracks it. When contenders question you, it shatters it. Tyson said his confidence evaporated long before his skills did, because he felt the world no longer believed in him. And once that aura is gone, everything else follows. Ilia is dangerously close to that same breaking point. Not because he's physically diminished, but because the world is starting to doubt his invincibility. And doubt is poison for a champion. This is the moment where fighters either fight their way back into reality or sink deeper into silence until the sport moves on without them. Every champion who collapses under personal turmoil eventually faces the same crossroads. And Mike Tyson proved all three possible outcomes. Ilia Topuria now stands at that same fork, staring at three futures that could define the rest of his career and the rest of his life. Future 1. Redemption. Tyson tasted this once, right after prison, when he rebuilt his body, sharpened his mindset, and recaptured the heavyweight title. For a brief moment, he looked like the phoenix rising from ashes. If Ilia chooses this path, his hiatus becomes the fuel that powers his return. He heals, restructures his life, builds emotional stability, and comes back with a vengeance. A comeback story worthy of documentaries. A champion who faced the same demons as Tyson, but outran them. But redemption requires a complete rebuild. Peace at home, stability with his children, emotional clarity. Without those, redemption is impossible. Future 2. Ruin. Tyson's second collapse, the public one, was driven by emotional exhaustion, divorce battles, financial losses, media humiliation, and Ilia is dangerously close to that slope. This version of the future sees Ilia returning too soon, entering a fight camp while mentally broken, losing focus, losing hunger, eventually losing the belt. Then the spiral begins. A loss triggers self-doubt. Self-doubt triggers hesitation. Hesitation triggers decline. Tyson once said, "I didn't lose because I was old. I lost because I was broken." Ilia risks the same fate if he fights before healing. Future 3. Reinvention. This is the path Tyson eventually found. Not through boxing, but through life. Reinvention is the escape route most fighters overlook. It's not about winning belts. It's about rebuilding identity. It's about creating stability outside the cage so the cage becomes a choice, not an escape. For Ilia, this could mean new training environment, new mentors, new routines, entirely new emotional architecture. Reinvention doesn't guarantee success in the octagon, but it saves the human beneath the fighter. And sometimes, that's the victory that matters most. Right now, Ilia is sitting at the point where Tyson once sat, a crossroads with no guidance, no clarity, no easy path. He has to choose not which future he wants, but which future he can survive. And the scariest part? Fighters don't always choose. Sometimes life chooses for them. Here's the truth. No one in the UFC will say out loud, they don't need Ilia Topuria. They want him, but they don't need him. The machine keeps running, whether he returns or not. And that's where Tyson's story becomes the final, brutal warning. When Tyson collapsed under personal turmoil, the boxing world didn't stop. Promoters replaced him with new faces. Networks shifted attention. The division evolved. Fans moved on. The UFC is even more unforgiving. If Ilia returns strong, he becomes the hero. The wounded king who fought through demons and came back sharper. The UFC will market his comeback like a Hollywood script. The crowd will roar. The belt will shine again. The redemption arc will print millions. But if he returns weak, if he hesitates, if he seems slow, unfocused, or emotionally drained, the UFC will feed him to the wolves. Tsarukyan, Poirier, Gaethje, even rising monsters waiting in the shadows. And once he loses, the UFC will pivot instantly. New stars will rise. New narratives will overshadow him. The belt will move on. And Ilia, like Tyson before him, will become a tragic what if. This is the cruel paradox. The UFC will use Ilia's suffering as content until that suffering lowers his value. A fan base that once adored his swagger is now questioning his mental state. A division that once feared him now senses opportunity. A promotion that once promised him superstardom now watches from a distance. The clock is ticking. The division is moving. And Ilia Topuria has a choice to make. Return as a focused, healed, grounded father and warrior. Or return as the version of Tyson the world remembers too well. The version who stepped into fights half present, with a broken heart, and paid the price. The cage doesn't care about divorce. The UFC doesn't care about heartbreak. Fans don't care about emotional recovery. But history does. History remembers which champions survived the chaos and which ones were swallowed by it. Ilia is living the same storm that destroyed the greatest heavyweight of all time. The only question left is whether he learns from the warning or becomes the sequel. Ilia Topuria isn't fighting opponents right now. He's fighting life. The same storm that once drowned Mike Tyson is now circling him. Divorce, pressure, doubt, and a world waiting to see whether he breaks or evolves. But legends aren't forged in perfect moments. They're forged in chaos. And soon, we'll see which version of Ilia walks out of the fire, the fallen king, or the one who refuses to fall at all. At the core of this entire story lies a truth fighters rarely say out loud. The greatest battles aren't fought under bright lights. They're fought in the dark, when no one is watching. Ilia Topuria's divorce isn't just drama, or headlines, or gossip. It's a reminder that champions are human before they're legends, that belts don't protect you from heartbreak, and that the strongest body in the world can still crack when the heart takes a hit. Mike Tyson showed us what happens when a fighter tries to outrun personal pain. It always catches up. It destroys focus. It eats discipline. It blinds the warrior long before an opponent does. And yet, Tyson also proved something else. A man can rise again once he understands what really matters. The moral here isn't about divorce, or money, or public pressure. It's about identity. If Ilia can rebuild the man outside the cage, the champion inside the cage will return stronger. But if he ignores the damage, if he tries to fight his way through emotional fire without healing it, the sport will break him the same way it broke Tyson. This story is a reminder for fighters, for fans, for anyone watching. Strength isn't measured by how hard you hit. It's measured by how you recover when life hits you harder than any opponent ever could. And Ilia Topuria now stands at that crossroads, not between victory and defeat, but between breaking and becoming unbreakable.